Hi everyone, so in this video we'll be looking at examples of rearranging equations, and as always the examples I'll be using are available in the link in the description in case you want to give them a go yourself. And we'll jump straight in and start the examples. Now the first question we have asks us to make x the subject for the following formulas, and the first formula we have is y equals x minus 3a. So whenever I have to rearrange an equation I always think of these three steps, and this is where, I'll just write it over here. So this is where step 1 is to simplify what I have. So what I mean by that is I look at both sides of the equal sign and say, right, can I make this any simpler? Can I expand any brackets that are there? Are there any like terms I can collect together? And then if not, I move on to step 2. So this is where I use addition or subtraction to isolate the x term. So I'm rearranging for x, so I know that my answer needs to be x is equal to some stuff. So I need to isolate the x term on its own before moving to step 3. And then once I have the x term on its own, I can then move on to step 3, which is to multiply or divide the x term to get x on its own. So for example, if I have 4x is equal to some stuff, then I want to divide both sides by 4 to get rid of the 4 with the x, just to leave me with x equals some stuff. So let's do some examples and hopefully realise where the three steps come in. So with this example then we have y equals x minus 3a. And then we can see that on the left hand side we have y, and on the right hand side we have x minus 3a. So we can't simplify either side. So we'll move on to step 2, which is to use addition or subtraction to isolate the x term. So what we can do is we can get rid of the minus 3a, which is with the x term. So to do this we'd have to add 3a to both sides. So what I like to do, I like to write these little arrows just to begin with, just so we can make sure that we're doing it to both sides. So if we have plus 3a on the left hand side and plus 3a on the right hand side, then we would have y plus 3a is equal to x minus 3a plus 3a, and then we can simplify this to give y plus 3a is equal to, and we'll just be left with x. So therefore we have x is equal to y plus 3a, and we already have x on its own, so we don't actually have to move to step 3 in this example. So that means our final answer is x equals y plus 3a as our final answer. So let's do another example. So this time we have y is equal to 4x, and we need to rearrange for x to make x the subject. So we'll start with step 1. Can we simplify either side? Well, we have y on the left hand side and we have 4x on the right hand side, so we can't do any simplification. So we'll move on to step 2. So can we add or subtract to isolate the x term? So we already have the x term isolated as we have 4x. So in this case we can move straight to step 3, which is to use multiplication or division to get the x on its own. So we have y equals 4x, and then to get rid of the 4 with the x we need to divide by 4 so that we have x on its own. So if we divide the left hand side by 4 and then divide the right hand side by 4, we will end up with y divided by 4 is equal to 4x divided by 4, and then we can simplify this to give y divided by 4 is equal to x. So therefore x is equal to y over 4. So then on our final answer line we can write x is equal to y divided by 4. So we've had the first example, which is where we use step 2 to use addition or subtraction. And then the last example we just did was to use step 3, which is for multiplication and division. So the next question is going to use both step 2 and 3. So we have y is equal to 6x minus 2. So I'll just write that underneath. So y equals 6x minus 2. And then if we go to step 1, we need to simplify both sides. So we have y on the left hand side and we have 6x minus 2 on the right hand side. So there's no need to simplify, which means we can move on to step 2, which is to add or subtract to isolate the x term. So what we want here is we want the 6x to be on its own. So we can do that by adding 2 to both sides, which would get rid of that minus 2 on the right hand side. So if we add 2 to the left hand side and add 2 to the right hand side, then this would mean we'd have y plus 2 is equal to 6x minus 2 plus 2. And then we can simplify this to get y plus 2 is equal 6x. So now we have the x term on its own, which means we can move on to step 3, which is to use multiplication or division to get x on its own. So if we have 6x, we need to divide by 6 so that we have x. So if we divide the left-hand side by 6, and we divide the right-hand side by 6, then we have y plus 2 over 6 is equal to 6x over 6. And then we can simplify that to get y plus 2 over 6 is equal to x. So that means our final answer is x is equal to y plus 2 over 6 as our final answer. Now we'll do another example. So we have 6x minus 2 is equal to 4y plus x. So this time we have two terms on both sides of the equation. So we want to first see if we can simplify both sides. So if we have 6x minus 2, so that can't be simplified at the moment. And if we have 4x plus x, that can't be simplified either. So we want to move on to step 2, which is to use addition or subtraction to isolate the x term. So we have an x term on the left-hand side of the equal sign, and we also have a x term on the right-hand side of the equal sign. So what we want to do is we want to get the x terms both on the same side. So if we move the x term on the right-hand side to the x term on the left-hand side, then this will make sure that our x is still positive. So what we'll do is we'll subtract x from both sides. So if we subtract x from the left-hand side and subtract x from the right-hand side, then we'll have 6x minus 2 minus x is equal to 4y plus x minus x. And then we can simplify this to give 5x, because we have 6x minus x, minus 2 is equal to 4y. And then we can notice that we still have a minus 2 on the left-hand side, so we want to apply step 2 again. So if we add 2 to both sides, we'll isolate the x term. So if we add 2 to the left-hand side, and add 2 to the right-hand side, we'll have 5x minus 2 plus 2 is equal to 4y plus 2. And then if we simplify this, we'll get 5x is equal to 4y plus 2. And then I'll rewrite this over here because we're not quite done yet. So 5x is equal to 4y plus 2. And then we can move on to step 3, so we can multiply or divide both sides in order to get the x term on its own. So if we've got 5x, then we need to divide by 5 so that we end up with x. So we'll divide the left-hand side by 5 and the right-hand side by 5, so that we have 5x divided by 5 is equal to 4y plus 2 divided by 5. And then we can simplify this to get x is equal to 4y plus 2 divided by 5. And that's the final answer, so we'll just write this on our answer line. So we have x is equal to 4y plus 2 divided by 5. So hopefully you can realise that as long as you follow those 3 steps, you should be able to isolate the x term on its own and then get rid of any coefficients that are with the x variable. But you have a couple of questions here just to try for yourself. So if you just use the examples we've just done as a guide, you should be able to find the answers. And obviously the solutions are in the description if you need them just to check your answer. Right, so we're next going to move on to fractions where we have one term. And the question asks us to make A the subject for the following formulas. And our first formula is B equals W over A. So if we write that underneath, so we have B equals W over A, and we're making A the subject. So we want to start off with step 1, simplify, which we can't do at the moment. So we'll move on to step 2, which is to get the A term on its own, which it already is, because we only have one term on the left and one term on the right. So we'll move on to step 3, which is to use multiplication or division to get A on its own. So what we can do is we can multiply both sides by A. so that a is no longer on the denominator. So if we times the left hand side by a, we'll get ab, and if we times the right hand side by a, we'll get aw over a, and then this will simplify to ab is equal to w. And then what we can do is divide both sides by b so that the a variable is on its own. So we have ab divided by b is equal to w divided by b. And then this will simplify to a is equal to w over b. So then our final answer is that a is equal to w over b. So we'll move on to the next example. So we have c is equal to a plus 2 all divided by 2. And we want to make a the subject. So we'll start by getting rid of the fraction, but there is two different ways to do this. So if we was to follow our 3-step list, what we would have to do is we'd have to split the a plus 2 up so that we have a divided by 2 plus 2 divided by 2, which is 1. And then we would be able to go to step 2 and then subtract 1 from both sides. But this would cause some extra working out, as what we could do is just times both sides by 2 so that we have 2c is equal to 2 times a plus b over 2. And then this would simplify to 2c is equal to a plus 2. And then we could move back to step 2 to isolate the a variable so that we have 2c minus 2 is equal to a plus 2 minus 2, which would give 2c minus 2 is equal to a. So then we have a is equal to 2c minus 2. So that means our final answer is a equals 2c minus 2. So we'll do one more example with this section. So this time we have fractions on both sides of the equal sign. We have 2b over 5 is equal to 2a over 3. So we're wanting to make a the subject. So we need to start off by simplifying and getting rid of the fractions. So if I just rewrite it underneath, we have 2b over 5 is equal to 2a over 3. And then to get rid of the fraction on the right hand side, we have to times both sides by 3. So we have 3 times 2b over 5 is equal to 3 times 2a over 3. Then simplifying this, we have 3 times 2, which is 6. So we have 6b over 5 is equal to, and 3 times 2 is 6. So we have 6a over 3, and 6a over 3 is equal to 2a. So therefore we have 6b over 5 is equal to 2a. So now we have the variable term on its own, which is on the right hand side here. So now if we want to get rid of the 2, we need to divide both sides by 2. So if we divide the left hand side by 2, we have 6b over 2 times 5. And then if we divide the right hand side by 2, we have 6a over 2. And then this simplifies to 6b over 10 is equal to a. And then we can simplify this to give a equals 3b over 5. So then our final answer will be a equals 3b over 5. So hopefully that wasn't too confusing for you. It does get a bit more tricky when we're dealing with fractions. But there is a couple of questions here for you to have a little practice with. And as I've said before, just use the 3 examples we've just done just to help you. So just rewind the video if you need to. And then there's some solutions in the description if you need them. So now we're going to move on to fraction examples where there's 2 terms involved. So the first question asks us to make z the subject for the following formulas. And the first one we have is b is equal to u plus 2z over 3. So if I just write that underneath, so we've got b is equal to u plus 2z over 3. So everything's sort of exactly what we've just been doing. We're just using the same 3 rules. But what we need to do is realise what's happening and realise that there's certain things we need to obey in order to make both sides equal. So for example here, if we times both sides by 3, which is what we need to do to get rid of the 3 on the denominator, we need to times all the terms on both sides by 3 in order for both sides to be equal to each other. So if we times the left hand side by 3, we would get 3b. And if we times the right hand side by 3, then we would end up with 3 times u plus 2z over 3, which if we was to expand that, we would have 3u plus 3 times 2z over 3, which is obviously just 2z. So we would end up with 3b is equal to 3u plus 2z. So this is a common place where people might go wrong, as they might assume that if they're timesing both sides by 3, they just have to times the b by 3 and then they just have to times the 2z by 3 to get rid of the 3 in the denominator. But when there's more than one term involved, especially on the same side as the variable you're trying to get on its own, then you need to make sure that you times all the terms by whatever it is you're timesing by. So there's a few examples here where you can have some practice with that, but we'll just finish the rest of this question. So at the moment we have 3b is equal to 3u plus 2z. So now we can move to step 2 and isolate the z term. So if we take 3u from both sides, we have 3b minus 3u is equal to 2z. So we've got the z term on its own now. We just need to get rid of the 2 in front of the z by dividing both sides by 2. So we would equal z is equal to 3b minus 3u divided by 2. So then on our answer line we can write z is equal to 3b minus 3u over 2. So we'll do the same thing with the next example. So we have y equals 3 over z plus x over y. So I'll just start by writing that underneath. So y equals 3 over z plus x over y. So what I want to start off by doing is timesing both sides by y, so that we have y squared is equal to 3y over z plus x. And then what I can do is move the x to the other side by subtracting x from both sides. So we have y squared minus x is equal to 3y over z. So now we have the z term on its own. And then what we need to do is get rid of the z from the denominator. So if we times both sides by z, we would end up with z times y squared minus x. And there's a reason why I've not expanded that. Is equal to 3yz over z. And then obviously the z's cancel out, so that we have z times y squared minus x is equal to 3y. And now what I can do is that since we have z times by the stuff in the bracket, we can divide both sides by y squared minus x, so that we have z times y squared minus x divided by y squared minus x is equal to 3y divided by y squared minus x. And this of course makes z equal to 3y over y squared minus x. So this is quite a hard example to rearrange because there's a few places where we might go wrong. But if you can tackle this type of question, then you should be able to tackle all questions where you have to make something a subject. So in our answer line, we have z is equal to 3y divided by y squared minus x. So now I have a few examples here just for you to have a go at and have a practice. So like I said before, just use the two we've just done just to help you get the answer and then check it in the solutions.